special coverage of arguably what will be the most crucial budget that Nirmala Sitharaman has delivered since she became the finance minister of the country. Her 8th consecutive budget. But given global headwinds as well as the situation back home, this budget presents both an opportunity and a challenge for the finance minister. Will she grab it or will it be squandered? That's been our focus for the last hour as we've been building up to the budget speech. You can see that all the formalities, the ceremonies, the rituals of budget making are taking place. The finance minister meeting with the president, Draupadi Murmu. There will be a cabinet meeting at about 10:25 where the budget is formally adopted. And then, of course, Nirmala Sitharaman's speech starts at 11 a.m. Shankar Iyer, who's seen many a budget, will recall the days when it used to be at 5 p.m. Perhaps life was more difficult then because you had less time to even process the budget before the next day's newspaper. 11 a.m. is a much better time. We moved away from that colonial legacy of 5 p.m.
Well, that was a good thing, and having it earlier also is, I think, a better idea to have it in the 1st of February. I think the time taken to sort of understand the budget remains the same, Rajdeep, because this is like discovery of India. You know, you discover the next day there are things that you didn't discover, and then the whole battalion of chartered accountants goes through the finance bill. I mean, the finance bill has more in it than the entire budget. I mean, all the attention is there on all the commas and full stops and semicolons. And by the time you figure out a good news on the budget day might be terrible news 3 days later or vice versa.
What's been the most landmark budget across the table over the last 25, 30 years? The budget that you think stood out? I mean, we could go back to Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister who passed away a month ago, 1991. Will that still remain a benchmark, landmark budget? Or have there been budgets since that you think have broken new ground? This is across the table, Siddharth. Please feel free to give your
So my
choice.
thing would be that events on budget days would be Narasimha Rao dismantling License Raj in 1991, Chidambaram's dream budget because that was the first attempt to recast the tax slabs, the budget that Yashwant Sinha presented where he brought in the FRBM and all the trimming
2003.
of... 2003.
as well.
Yeah.
FEMA changes.
And thereafter, maybe the 2007 budget, which was the first ambitious outward-looking budget because we were riding the global growth wave. I think after that, I think GST budget is the 2017 budget where Arun Jaitley got the GST through. That, I think, would be the remark.
You know, I'll say we need to hark back perhaps at this stage to a combination of 1991 and 2007. 1991, in terms of articulating a new reform strategy, the country needs it 4 decades, and a new strategy on tax. 60%, I repeat this point, of our GDP is by people's spending. If that is not addressed, the other levers can only be pushed to a certain extent. And given the global environment and, you know, export questions, I think this is the strategy to go forward. So if we have both, I think it would be my dream budget today.
So if you distill the budget's challenge, it's basically about costs. The cost of governance, why you can't fix the PSU story, why you can't raise more money as asset monetization to pay for investment.
Shankar, I think
the cost of governance.
There is no intent to fix the PSU story. It's the other way. A lot of taxpayer money is now going into reviving PSUs.
No.
This is big governance. There is no minimum government. There is, in fact, maximum government that is playing out on the PSU
That is true,
side.
but you know, there are ways to do this. You don't need to sort of walk into the concept of private ownership. You can have a dispersed public ownership. You can put all the 51+% equity into a sovereign fund, call it the Amrit Kal fund, and list it on as an ETF. Let people subscribe to this. Get government out of that excess of 51%. I mean, this has been, they're talking about it for at least 10 years, 12 years now. There are 4 reports that have come on divestment, none of which will move because there is a genuine fear among all political parties of concentration of wealth and concentration of power. I mean, can this system handle a few more billionaires in the landscape? That is the question that they are wrestling with. So there is that part. So there is cost of governance, cost of living, and cost of business, which is compliance, regulation, all that. So if you put it down, ease of living, ease of governance, ease of business is cost of living, cost of business, cost of governance.
Rajiv, any budget that stands out for you, that you believe over the last 25, 30 years has sort of changed the landscape forever?
No, so the industrial delicensing event which Shankar talked about,
91.
I think, yes, that was obviously historic. It was outside the budget actually. It was announced by the Commerce Minister, who was the Prime Minister. So, which was absolutely transformational, of course. And Shankar also talked about the indirect tax reform that came in. I am hopeful that if we have important direct tax reforms and a new direct tax code, we could have possibly this budget or the next budget based on the commitment given by the government that they'll have a new direct tax code. That could also become one of the important landmark ones if we get a new direct tax code, which has been very long overdue now.
And also look at the disastrous budgets. I mean, retrospective taxation for one.
Pranam Mukherjee.
And the fact that once it happens, everybody kind of loses their tongue and starts praising the budget regardless of how disastrous it's going to be for their pockets, which is why you need incisive and objective commentary of the kind that you're hearing on India Today for people to call a spade a spade. I mean, if something's bad, it should be called out for being bad. If something's good, it should be appreciated as such. You shouldn't try and spin things as disastrous as retrospective taxation as being, oh, Mr. Mukherjee, what a fantastic job you've done, like we saw